Hey guys, welcome to Searching for Ghosts on YouTube. Please subscribe. This is the Revisited series, and this is on season 1, The Disappearance of Cayce Lynn McDaniel. We're going to take them episode by episode. The first episode was called August and Everything After. It was named after Counting Crows' album. Cayce McDaniel disappeared from her home, supposedly, after being dropped off from a church party. It was a back-to-school bash going into her freshman year, okay? And this was August 16th, 1996, in Milan, Tennessee, which is in West Tennessee. It's 30 minutes north of Jackson. Jackson's about halfway between Memphis and Nashville on the Interstate 40. Just to kind of spot it for you. I started, thinking about this during the 20th anniversary, which would have been 2016. And I put out a couple of teasers at the end of 2016, but I started the season in earnest in April of 2017. Okay, I want to clear some things up first. I want to talk about mistakes, maybe regrets, kind of thing. First of all, it's kind of cringeworthy for me to listen to because, for one, I don't like the way I talk in it. There's something I didn't know what I was doing, but there's also some things that were pretty good out of the gate. But one of the things is I caused controversy where I was not trying to and didn't expect to. But in one of the teasers right before the actual season started, I talked about Milan and its hometown pride and how we always joked about it in Jackson because if you ever met anybody from Milan, they always built their town up. They just always did. So much so that it became a running joke, that caused all kinds of, I had like so many trolls after that, I'm not necessarily apologizing for that. I think that I had so much blowback over that. I think that only proves that I was right about it. I do want to clarify though. But I did actually in the teaser, I said that I used to find that annoying, but it's really endearing. Jackson could use more hometown pride. You know what I mean? Like, it's very unique to West Tennessee. You can go to any of the other small towns, and everybody's got their own level of pride. Milan's got it in spades, though, and always has. And it became fodder for jokes when we were coming up as teenagers. It was just my way of trying to set the stage for the town and what I knew about it as an outsider. But I caught hell for that. Again, I'm not necessarily apologizing for it. Just know that I didn't mean anything by it, and it might have actually done some good because I think it stirred people up from Milan to listen to the podcast. You have to understand the podcast. We had to kind of do on social media. We had to do explainers of how you listen to it, like depending on what kind of phone you had. It's not like now where it's just, we kind of had to explain what a podcast was, So, it was a different time, it was 4 years ago, but so much has changed. The other thing was, I think this was in the teaser as well, but I recorded a Milan Mirror reporter without his knowledge and ended up using it. And, I got called to the carpet right after I did that. I'm not a journalist, but I've written for a couple of newspapers. I know enough about journalistic ethics. I knew not to do that. It was so good though, and it was kind of innocuous. It only kind of proved the point of what I was just talking about, where he was like, "Dude, if they don't know you, if they don't know your parents, if they didn't grow up with you, they're not going to talk to you, man. You might as well be from New York City," kind of thing. I thought I was a West Tennessean covering a West Tennessee case, but yeah, he was right. They looked at me as an outsider. It was just too good. I had to use it. But the publisher called me to the carpet over that right after it aired, really. And I told him I would pull it, and I apologized, for that. I do apologize for that. So there's that. A little too much about me in that first season. I was transitioning from trying to be, I was a failed Nashville songwriter, and I was trying to find who I was too. And I think it was a defense mechanism to be like, okay, I'm not a journalist, guys. I'm just a dude who plays music, and I'm trying to just seek out the truth, but it was too much about me, you know. That could have been said in like one little paragraph and been done with. Nobody cares about me, you know. The podcast wasn't about me. It was about Cayce McDaniel. Okay, but let's talk about the stuff that I'm not ashamed of, that I don't have any regrets over. I don't know if you guys remember Topics. It was kind of a discussion board thing, and for some reason it became a magnet for just all kinds of. And this was kind of before cancel culture was really in full swing. Oh man, Topics was rough. I got accused of kidnapping Cayce McDaniel on Topics. Why is he so interested in this case? Maybe he had something to do with it. I was 22 years old at the time and recovering from cancer, by the way, in Jackson. I probably didn't even know that she went missing at the time. I was kind of had my own stuff going on. You know what I mean? So yeah, I should not be looked at as a suspect. But that was put on Topics. That is the best example of what Topics was. So there was some really harsh things that came out, and Casey's mother there was a lot of suspicion thrown at her in those threads on Topics, and I've always been a champion of the underdog, and I just there's no way this mother had anything, which I didn't know anything about her. I didn't know anything. I'm not from there, you know. So I was like, well, this will be great. This will give her an opportunity to set the record straight and maybe find her daughter, and she's going to want to talk to me. I kind of went into that with a pretty open mind and was pretty objective. And I didn't dismiss everything that I read on there on Topics about her. I kept it in the back of my mind and was like, okay, well, there's a lot of suspicion around her, but let's see what she has to say, kind of thing. I went into it not having any prejudices. There wasn't a lot on Cayce. There was what we called the Charlie Project story. And basically that was just reprinted. And, if you found different websites talking about Cayce McDaniel, her disappearance, it was pretty much that Charlie Project thing. And we'll get into the story here in a minute. But she was dropped off at the church from the church party by a chaperone. She unlocked the door, went in, everything was cool, waved, went back in. And that's the last she was seen. And then the house. The mother came home and her boyfriend and found the house. Casey's TV was on. There was a milk and cookies her clothes were on the bed, and the back door was wide open. That has been the story for 20 years. With very little variation and very, very, very little additions to it. They would dig ponds and they would, drain ponds to try to, they would have leads over the years, but nothing ever changed as far as Cayce McDaniel, which again, there's more on the internet now, mainly because of this podcast about Cayce, but at the time it was all just a different website's name saying the same thing. That story just kind of never evolved. It was always just that's the thing, nobody ever went any farther with it, at least as far as the media went. Okay. You have to understand that, I'd never done this before. So I was a little nervous, right, going into it, but I was naive at the same time. Again, I thought, okay, I'll just find Casey's mother and talk to her, and there will be that will be the foundation for the podcast, and then we can branch off from there. But we'll get the mother story. Well, I started trying to track her down, and it was just this big mystery of where she even was, right? And I found a a classmate of Cayce's that I actually used to work with, and we were acquaintances. Um, and we stayed in contact even after I quit the job where we worked together. And I'm trying to think if it was her mother. It's either her mother or her aunt was the one who brought Cayce to the party. Everything from the party after is kind of what's relevant. But so she was there on the front end. And so it's like, okay, cool. Let me, can you put me in touch with her? And there's where I started learning, like, I had my own fears about dealing with a possible murder case, a child abduction case, right? Um, and like I said, reading on topics, there was some pretty creepy stuff on there, but I kind of took that with a grain of salt. It's when I started digging into it, and it was just like trying to get the basics, right? Trying to get somebody to talk to me. And Amber Hansen in the beginning, and everybody's got their own reasons, and Amber had hers, and she was right in doing it. And everybody was scared, man. Everybody was this. Everybody was nervous about this stuff. Amber was Cayce's best friend, and she had been the only one. If I said there was not much on the internet about Cayce, anything that was put out there outside of the Charlie Project, just typical copy and paste story, the story was Amber trying to keep her memory alive, keeping the vigils going. She would do videos for the Mylan Mirror on anniversaries and talk about it. She was the only one really championing this case to keep it from just being totally forgotten. So I figured she would be an easy one. In the beginning, I thought the mother, Cindy, I thought she would be an easy one. Well, I couldn't track Cindy down. And then it was like, oh, yeah, we think we found her. I was like, okay, well, put the word out and, tell them what I'm wanting to do. And because it was somebody I knew, tell them I'm straight up, like I'm not trying to, this isn't like a gotcha, whatever, I've read this stuff on topics, but I'm just trying to. And Amber was one of the hardest people to get, but she is in August and everything after. She is in this episode here. But it happened because of a really good friend of mine. Went to school with her and put a good word in for me. So anyway, there was all this secrecy about it that you found out pretty early on. It was like, and that started, when you don't know what you're doing and you're digging, man, that started making me nervous, you're like, well, like when I made the first trip to Milan and I went to the Mylan Mirror, that's where I recorded the reporter when I shouldn't have. And I went to the police. I tried to contact this girl that I worked with and said, hey, would you want to meet and talk about, get you, I think I was recording everything out in the field with an iPhone. I didn't have any equipment back then. It was very punk rock, man. And it was just, oh, well, I'm not in town. I was like, oh, okay. Well, when will you be in town? I'll make the trek back up here, And it was just like crickets, right? And it's just like, man, it's like, this is really hard. And at the time I didn't even know Newspaperscom existed. I called the Jackson Sun, our paper, because I knew they would cover most of it. So I got some stuff from Mylan Mirror in their archives. They have them in books, and I found a bunch of stuff there, and I just took pictures on my phone. The Jackson Sun actually went through and dug through. They didn't have it computerized, and they like scanned all these articles, anything they could find on Cayce McDaniel. They were so good because I didn't even know about. That's how naive I was. I didn't know anything about Newspapers.com, and I didn't have internet at the house. I didn't have this set up. I wasn't in the best position to research this stuff. But like I said, eventually we got Amber in to do it, and she's the basis of August and everything after.
We had just started our freshman year of high school in 1996, and our church had a back-to-school bash, it was called, and our youth kind of hosted it, and we invited, other kids from different schools. Our church was right between Milan and Humboldt, so we had youth from Humboldt and Milan, and then Gibson, and just the whole small little area there. So we had a lot of visitors at our church that night. But we had a dinner, a pizza party, and a local band played. It was actually put together, a band that some high school kids put together, and they played, and it was overall good time. Everybody was in a good mood. She seemed to be in a really good mood that night. We danced and talked and just kind of hung out with friends like you do when you're 14 years old. And so then when the event ended, it probably ended around, I'm going to guess, 10:30 or 11. And our youth group, since we hosted it, we stayed behind and cleaned up and made sure everybody, left and everything got locked up and everything was cleaned up. And one of the chaperones took Cayce home that night. If I remember correctly, it was probably between 11:30 and 12 that she was dropped off. And the chaperone that took her remembers that she took her, pulled into her driveway, she got out of the car, she waited on her to walk in the house, and I think it was obvious that no one was home because it was dark. But she went in, turned the lights on, came back outside, waved like everything was okay, and shut the door behind her. So that's when, obviously, the chaperone would just leave, assuming everything was okay. And as far as I know, that was the last time anybody saw her.
So it was really cool that we got Amber, she sets the stage. She was with her, at the party. So we're going to cut to some audio from the podcast because she can tell it better than I. And it's basically a first-hand account of everything that went down, and then she was involved the next day.
Anyway, fast forward, everybody goes home like we don't know anything's going on. Well, not even really early, I'm going to guess probably 9 o'clock, 9:30, I got a phone call, and it was Cayce's mother. And she said, let me talk to Cayce. And I said, well, Cayce's not here. And she said, well, she told me she would spend the night with you. And I said, no. So she said, well, okay, well, call around and see if you can find her. Call any other friends and see if she went to somebody else's house. She just seemed very calm about it all. And I thought, well, maybe she did go somewhere else, even though it was late at night when she got home. So I started calling around to different friends of ours, and of course no one has seen her or talked to her. So I then turned around and called her mother back and tell her I've called everybody I think of, no one has talked to her. That's just what has stuck in my head as being off as the very get-go out of the gate is how she said she was supposed to be at my house.
Yeah.
And she wasn't. And, I mean, even then, I felt like something was weird about that. I don't know if she did not have a car or her car wasn't there. She asked my mom and I could come get her mother.
Mm-hmm.
We get up and we head out to her house and pick her up, and somehow we ended up driving out to her uncle's house, her mother's brother's house. She wanted to see if she was there. Of course, we get out there, and she's not there either. And then we get back to Milan. She wants to stop and make a phone call. And so we stop at my aunt's house. We leave again, and then at that point is when we go to the police station. But I remember her telling them what happened as far as how she supposedly found her house when she got home at whatever time it was. And I know how the scenario, the story, whatever you want to call it, I know it verbatim. She walks in and the TV is on, and the clothes that she wore that night are on her bed, and there's bowls, cookies crumbled up and milk sitting in her floor. There's no signs of struggle. The back door is open. I know that story so well. But what that is to me is a story. It could be 100% true. I'm not saying it's not. But there was no, quote, photographic evidence from police of that scene. Because they aren't brought to the scene until the next day. And I don't even know if they even came then, honestly. I think that, right off the bat, the police thought she ran away. Or I guess maybe that's their first thing to do,
Right.
just to give it time. I don't know, but I'm certain that they didn't immediately get in a cruiser and come to her house to check things out that minute. You know, it was sometime later. It might have been that evening, or it might have even been the next day. But that's just all something that has hovered in my mind over these years. Is, I mean, of course, that's the story. That's what's happened. But how do we really know that?
Yeah.
You know.
God, I didn't even think about that. That's so true.
You know, if I came home, and I'm just speaking as a mother now, but even if I assume my child went to one of her friend's house for the night, I come home and it appears somebody has been there. The TV's on, the clothes are changed, the back door's open. I highly doubt I'm just going to go to bed, and whenever I wake up, just be like, oh, you left the door open. You left the TV on. Yeah, because that's just not something she would do in the norm. It would be so out of the norm that my flags would go up, and I'd be like, something's not right here.
You can hear the light bulb go on for me when Amber says this. Where on one hand, she's not suspicious that it took Cindy 10 hours to contact authorities because of maybe the parenting style, you know, of maybe Cayce had a lot of freedom to come and go, right? People may not agree with that parenting style, but it happens, right? But that doesn't jive with the house. You know, the Charlie Project story. All we have and all we've had for 20 years was Cayce gets dropped off. They watch her go inside from the church party. Then the mother comes home with the boyfriend, you know, in the wee hours of the morning and finds the house the way it was with the back door open. That's the story. So that's a suspicious setting. The house looks like Cayce left the TV on. The back door is open. Cayce left her shoes there. Cayce left milk and cookies on the floor. You know, looks like that. Just listening to that sounds like an abduction from the house, right? That doesn't jive with the waiting 10 hours then, right? You can't have it both ways. You can't have the house looking suspicious when you come home and then waiting 10 hours and going, well, you know, we didn't think anything was wrong. You know, those two things just don't mix. And it wasn't until Amber mentioned that, it went right over my head until she said that. And I was like, man, that's right. That's right. Those are the main components, you know, of this whole story that we've had for 20 years. And it's like the house scene, the milk and cookies story does not jive with waiting 10 hours. It just doesn't, you know? Anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this season 1, The Disappearance of Cayce McDaniel, Revisited, episode 1, August and everything after. You can find the podcast on wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Thanks, guys.